Welcome to Flat Earth Debate, Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patreon, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon, so a massive shout out, thanks and appreciation to Guns of Navarone RMP, Troy Shuka, Bose Nail, Justin Duso, Joseph Pizarro, Samson, Maris, Hairy Blade, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Lost Cat FE, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Mike, Muted, Dick Earth Skeptic, NA Literalist, Maria Neelands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Rob H, Nathan Thompson, The Real Gabster, Windrider, Liam Nedrick, Owen Jennisons, Abraham Mohammed, Dave Rakia Gafford, Naibai, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic936, Life is Short, Fireball X, Texas Mike, Edwin Johnson, Kirsten Smith, Alexander Main, David Wayne Foster, and Dank. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I'll raise the mic on whoever is in Google and Discord so you can enjoy their conversation while I set up for today's live show. Pardon? Say again, sorry.
I said I just had a chance to watch that Tim Osman destruction last night. I said, good job.
Oh, cool. Thanks. Yeah, a bit rude and crude in places, but other than that, yeah, very good. Nice to hear Tim Osman disclaiming that nobody claims the horizon's Earth curve.
Great confessions, right?
Yeah. When you're put on the spot with a logical consistency that's already been acknowledged by the globe side as having debunked the physicality of the horizon, and you tout a picture that shows a horizon claimed to be blocking boats and buildings, and it's pointed out that the Black Swan debunked that, your only response is to say, well, no one's claiming the horizon's Earth curve. It's like, you are. Here's your images with "this is Earth curve" written above, multiple pictures of horizons. You know what I mean?
But when they say it, it's
Yes.
just so beautiful, and then you get them to repeat it.
Yeah. A couple of white knights tried to come to his aid.
Lots of white knights tried to come to his aid. They were running from the four corners of the internet to come to his aid.
Yeah. One of them claimed to be on our side. Pulled him off after the fact. It's on the recording. I'm like, look, I'd rather hear Tim Osman disclaim that the Earth has no Earth curve at the horizon than listen to you tell us how it's not important to listen to him. Like, shut up. Don't you understand what's going on?
Might be one of those things that new people don't understand. Like when there's somebody like Tim Osman that's been in this for, 5 years now?
Yeah, 5 years.
Saying something like, yeah, when he's saying something like that, that's a fairly big deal.
Yeah. It's like, I'd rather hear that unimpeded. Not, oh, this isn't important. What, to hear Tim Osman disclaim that nobody's claiming Earth curve as horizon, asking me for 3 people that do, and me giving 3 examples he's referenced. I could have given 4. One of them would be him, with his image, but that's too obvious, right? I decided against doing a trimmed out version. So there's as always, there's the re-up on the second channel and the original on the main channel. And I said I'll trim that out. And I thought, no, I won't. They're both done with a proper thumbnail. And they're both quite lengthy. And yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I would quite like the ad revenue. But on on reflection, it's like, no, I think they're better standing as they are in the entirety of the debate. And the reason is because on that show, there was about 5 different debates. And there was also a sixth that was sort of Anthony Riley discussing an internal issue. So there's quite a lot of content in that show. And I was watching it, when I watched it through on the re-up, I'm like, I don't know, this is overall just a very good show. Why hack it down to Tim Osman's bit and give Tim Osman the kudos of being something he isn't? It's like there's other people who have worthy discussions on that show. Yes, he's the most prolific. Yes, he's the, what's the word? The most infamous.
When I was a Glober, I watched him a lot. You know, it was, it was funny, I guess, when I believed that absurdity.
Oh, I see. So you were a Glober and you used to subscribe to Tim. That's interesting. When Tim's got a channel, I don't know if he's got one now, but I was always subscribed to him. I quite like his taste in music, if nothing else. So he used to play quite good music while he was doing his videos. So he'd be making some thumbnail or meme about somebody, and he'd have just good music playing in the background, which I quite appreciated. I'd often put Tim Osman's stream on, stick it on the big stereo. It's like, yeah, this is ace. Thanks, Tim. Be my DJ.
Well, he's actually the one that led me here.
Love it.
Thanks, Tim.
Tell me more. I thank these people for their adverts. And sometimes people are like, yeah, you're just saying that. It's like, no, it's an advert. It will, and here's the example, lead people to me. Right? Just fill me in. So I know you've already basically summed it up, but just so you presumably heard me mentioned, or this channel mentioned on his show, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think there was an episode where he was talking about, like, he was trying to get people that followed him to come watch the live stream of him destroying Nathan Oakley.
And now here you are.
I kind of stuck around.
Perfect. Thanks for the ads, guys. Some of them will throw their dummy out the pram when I don't respond to their adverts. They find that quite annoying.
But I think if I hadn't have been listening to the argument for it's been about 3 years now, when the Black Swan come out, it wouldn't have affected me as much, I think. Because,
yeah, the Black Swan was a big turning point. I remember pleading it to QE. So he'd presented it to me and I was like, I don't know if it makes enough sense. It needs tidying up, or I can't remember how I phrased it. I think I said it was squirrely or something like that. Anyway, he comes back a day or two later, shows it me. I recognise what it is and in its simplicity and its logical consistency, and start pleading to him, do you not realise how important this is, John? Do you not realise how big and significant this is? It's like he's just developed this motor soda. You know what I mean? He's the one who's formulated it. I'm pleading to him about how important it is. It's like, yeah, I get it. I kind of invented it. Do you realise?
Yeah, I always took the sextant's measurements to, positions of the stars and things like that as proof, of the geometry. But you can't put a sextant on an apparent horizon and measure anything.
Exactly. Exactly. But nobody's claiming the horizon's Earth curve, John. Yeah, that's why it was extremely important to hear that unimpeded. Just add it to the list, right? We wouldn't expect to see a geometric horizon, end quote, AB Science. The geometric horizon only exists in the maths. The rumpus. We wouldn't expect to see geometry. Planar walk. They just keep piling on. Nobody's claiming that Earth curve is the horizon, Tim Osman. At best, you would have debunked the radius, Mr. Sensible. And so it goes on.
I figured out why Tim said, am I being muted? He was hoping he was being muted when he said that crap. Like, he was hoping that didn't come through.
Yeah, maybe. Wishful thinking, you seem to think, right?
Yeah, because that's just... I remember there was a point before he said you bamboozled me that he couldn't have got no quieter if somebody broke his jaw.
Yeah. All of the silences weren't because he was muted. It was because he had nothing to say. And then when he was wrapping his head around it, it's like, no, you've turned this around. You've bamboozled me. It's like, yeah, I have turned it around. I've turned it from you telling us how you've got an image of Earth curve at the horizon to you telling us how no one claims it. So yeah, I have turned it around, haven't I? I've turned it from your globe claim about horizons physically blocking things into you telling us no one claims that. Welcome to Flat Earth. Bamboozled. Yeah, right. You mean you didn't manage to keep up with the Black Swan argument? Yeah, that's what you mean by bamboozled, Tim.
Yeah, I still remember when I figured out what the Black Swan actually meant. It was like somebody hit me really hard, and I stiffened out. And then I started like going through everything, and like everything just started falling apart.
Yeah, that's me saying to QE, do you realise what this means? And you're exemplifying it because you were actually on the globe side before that, which is amazing. It's so beautiful that you're here telling us all this.
Yeah, I feel like that's about the only information I had to give right now is like the inside of how I used to think.
Well, it's fresh enough, right? It's 11 months on from the Black Swan, or I don't know how long after it came out that you saw it and recognised it, but, you know, maybe 6 months to a year later, I would assume that the remnants of being on the globe with all their paradigms intact, with an R assumption that's perfectly acceptable and legitimate to presuppose in every example, all of those things held true for you up until that moment. And I'm sure you can still easily, and you do, verbalise that. And it's invaluable. You've no idea how much I like it when you tell us about how you were as a globehead and your transitional period into this. The fact that it's down to the Black Swan is even more epic, especially as we've got one on screen now from National Geographic. Not that you can see it in Discord, but for the audience's benefit, National Geographic also have a Black Swan. It's on screen right now. The horizon's behind where they're saying this flag is obscured. So they're saying, look, this is how many feet in inches, obviously excluding perspective values, but behind it there's a horizon. So it's a Black Swan. Anyway. I'm sure there's tons of them.
Yet, as a glober, I never looked at that picture and seen anything but Earth curvature in my mind. But looking back on it, it's so silly that's so far closer than the horizon appears to be that to assert it as an Earth curve is ridiculous.
Right. It's actually a Black Swan.
Yeah, I don't know how they continue to do it. You know, the geometry of the horizon was the argument, and I don't know how you continue on without it.
Can't.
That's why I said that they.
You can't. It's leaving them in
that-
cognitive pain. There's a lot more cognitive pain, and I think it's completely correlated with people recognising the substantial nature of the Black Swan argument. The more people recognise it, the more cognitive pain we see.
Well, yeah, I can see that. Like, but everything. I mean, like, gravity is just, it's kind of like the Band-Aid for I guess the top 3 housekeeping questions to justify those. You know, it's just conceptual Band-Aid for flaws in the model. So, they would rather argue about that and let gravity die 1,000 times than discuss the lack of geometry.
Yeah, or you don't keep up with the conversation, you don't keep up with the argument, and then you come in and tell us, look, here's a picture from a high-altitude balloon of Earth curvature at the horizon. Or here's a multiple horizon claim that Earth is blocking these buildings at varying rates. At a physical geometric point, we can measure the blockage in feet and inches, i.e. a reified physical geometric spheroid horizon that's been debunked by the Black Swan.
Yeah, that how to debate a flat earther, that really is the horizon is the beginning and end of the argument. Yep. They were right about that.
Yeah, exactly. And that got discussed on the end of that exact show with Tim Osman in, the title and thumbnail. But part of that was discussed, right? The example about how to win in an argument with a flat earther, and then their declaration that it all begins at the horizon. It's like, yeah, that's exactly why we've won. because we've debunked a physical geometric sphere edge being a tangible point that you can put a tangent mark on and draw a straight line to, when you're telling us, A, you can't draw a straight line to it, apparently it's refracted, and B, the refracted value you're using requires the R value to be measured as a physical geometric sphere edge tangent point, so Al-Biruni can derive the R value for it. Well, without those two things, they've got nothing. There is no sphere. Their assumption falls on its arse. So it's not even tenable to assume R and say, well, I assume R gives us a physical geometric sphere edge horizon. It was measured by Al-Biruni, and from that I can derive the R value and move the horizon into a non-physical location, apparent, based on the R that I measured with something I couldn't see. It's a paradox. It falls on its arse with the Black Swan. There is no redeeming the globe model. The geometry's dead. No redemption,
I
should say.
I tried to rationalize it for a couple of weeks afterwards, and it was, I would go down a path within my mind, and then I would run into needing R or some way to measure R. It was always R, because you can't even beg the question of gravity without R.
Yeah, everything revolves, excuse the pun, around R.
Literally, it does, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, that was highlighted with red rhetoric several years ago. The assumption we discussed on Ballbusters the other day. But that assumption, when it's inserted into the mathematics, can easily be removed with the same assumptions on the flat Earth side, which is another false dichotomy that flat earthers fall into, and they start reifying the sun into a physical actual item that they can tangibly measure and give a distance much shorter than if you insert the R value. But understanding those mathematics and just telling people that it's okay to beg the question of R, when that was pointed out, and Mick West boldly disclaimed that yes, we assume the R value, people just said, well, yeah, we do assume the R value. Well, because we already know. In other words, we point out that it's a begging the question fallacy to assume R, and they say, well, no, we are okay assuming it because we already know it. In other words, just describe the fallacy as the justification for the fallacy. And hence you end up going, okay, so they say it's not a logical fallacy to assume their outcome in every example and assume they've got a radius value already. So we need to debunk the radius value itself. So within the presupposition, well, we already know Earth's a sphere. Okay, so if Earth's a sphere, radius 3959, then every distance to horizon can be no more than 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet, which would give you a geometric horizon, a tangent point capable of measurement to give you the R value by way of Al-Biruni's trig. Well, as soon as they say, well, we can't see the geometric horizon, we wouldn't expect to see geometry. The geometric horizon only exists in the maths. All of those quotes, nobody's claiming we see the horizon as Earth curve. Upon declaring that, well, how are you going to measure it then? How are you going to derive R then? How are you going to use terrestrial refraction, which includes R, if you can't measure it? The answer is, you don't. It was merely in the maths. It was only ever a mathematical model reified by way of excluding perspective. Exclude perspective and call it Earth curve. Don't mention that things get distance. Give the smaller with distance. Just give every target a feet and inches value that doesn't change with distance. That way, anything that disappears into the distance can be attributed, in orthographic view, side-on Muppet vision, to Earth curve obstruction. Physical geometry getting in the way. So, their assertion is Earth curve, physical geometry, a horizon edge for boats to fall over, gets in the way at a specific feet and inches value, excluding perspective. Well, you need a physical geometric sphere edge horizon then, don't you? And if you're telling us we don't see it, then you haven't got it. The horizon is an Earth curve. Bye-bye, globe Earth model.
Yeah, you said something real interesting, too, about the false dichotomy. That used to be one of the, mental tricks that I would pull on myself when talking to a flat earther, is try to get them to state a model as truth. Because the globe model, if nothing else, is eloquent and well-designed, but it's still just a model, But if you could get them to claim a model, then you could, hold them up against each other and hold on to your crazy religious belief.
Right. Let's not worry about the fact that I'm assuming a version of reality that's, as you describe it, eloquent. And that isn't justified in this instance because of the Black Swan and what we've just discussed. Let's assume it anyway, but see how well you can describe the world with a model, and if you don't do as good a job as me, my model is the winner, and therefore that's our reality.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds real coarse when you say it that way. Yeah. But that's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah, generally speaking, it'll either be just a begging the question fallacy. It's to say, I already know we're on a sphere. And my example is that if we're on a sphere, this will happen. That's then affirming the consequent, begging the question. So if P, then Q, Q therefore P. If the Earth's a sphere, first example, first everything that starts with a globe proof is going to start with a begging the question that Earth's a sphere. So if P, Earth a sphere, then I'll observe star rotation doing blah, 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 blah. I observe star rotation doing blah, 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 therefore Earth's a sphere. What does your model describe that star movement as? If it doesn't work as well as my globe model, when I assume that travelling south leaves me antipodal hanging off the bottom of a sphere, then your model isn't as good as mine, and therefore we are standing on a sphere, and travelling south does mean you're antipodal, as I assume in my example. Third way, so we've got begging the question, always, without exception. Affirming the consequent. I beg the question, I give an example, and describe something I observe. I then reiterate that I've observed it, therefore my assumption that a sphere has been the reason for that is true. That's an affirming the consequent formal logical fallacy. The third one, most typical, we've just detailed between us, John and I, is the false dichotomy. Here's my model, here's your model. What, you don't have a model? Well, you must, because I'm going to show how your model that you don't have is worse than my model that's reified. And if my model's better, I win. So, begging the question, affirming the consequent, false dichotomy, those are the top three fallacies used to assert the Earth's a sphere.
Another thing they do is to place their perception of what you think your model is in their own model.
That's called a baseless generalization and stereotyping fallacy.
Yep, they'll do that one a lot too.
Flat earthers think that the Earth is rising up through a sky vacuum at 9.8 metres per second as boats fall off the edge of a pizza pie. And therefore, my model with Earth as a sphere, antipodal assumption travelling south, is much better than their assumption, even though their assumption is actually the assumption and description of the Flat Earth Society, and nobody in actual Flat Earth terms, that's a bit of a generalisation, nobody claims Earth is a pizza pie flying up through a sky vacuum with boats falling over the edge of it. The reason that's pushed as the controlled opposition narrative is because the globe has boats falling over an edge and is in a sky vacuum.
And to bring it back to Tim Osman, I noticed in his cognitive dissonance, that was his last grasp at trying to bring in what other flat earthers say. You know,
yeah.
he was
correct.
Desperately, he was just swinging everywhere.
Yeah, correct. So he's made his begging the question fallacies, presented his reification of sphere edge horizons, poo-pooed the black swan not understanding it, and when he's pinned to the wall and started to declare that nobody's claiming Earth curve is horizon, he starts attempting to say, all flat earthers think there is a dome. It's like, just spew out a baseless generalisation about what flat earthers think to try and attempt to distract the conversation away from your absolute pummeling onto a baseless generalisation that you can debunk as a straw man.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Like I said, I mean, that Tim Osman thing that made my night. Good job.
Yeah, it was a good moment for me. Tim Osman's a prolific troll. More than happy to admit all the trolling things he used to do when he was a bit younger. He's grown up a little bit since then, I've got to admit. And in terms of personality, when I say I probably wouldn't want to go out to the pub with any of these things, Tim Osman's probably the exception. He's probably quite a good laugh in person. I'd probably get along with him. So don't get me wrong, I don't see Tim Osman as a mate. He's a foe. But by the same token, it's like, yeah, those are the kind of people that you really rejoice when you get a good victory over them, right? Because it's a bit of tit for tat. All right, he'll have a pop, I'll have a pop. It's all in the name of fun and the demolition of a heliocentric worldview.
It was almost brutal. It was almost hard to watch. If I hadn't spent so many years listening to him trash flat earthers, I couldn't have watched that. It was just brutal.
But that's something that's your average Joe that just turns up and watches that might not get. It's like, why is he being so brutal? Why don't you just hold true to the arguments? It's like, yeah, well, there is quite a lot of personal background to this, so yeah, I am going to be brutal. As brutal as I possibly can be on the limits of what's tolerable by YouTube. Why not? The guy's a scumbag, he deserves it. I say with a smile. He deserves a taste of his own medicine, that's what I'm actually saying. Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by Neil and Paul in Meet. Google, and we've also got a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Good morning. Got a mic check?
Morning, Paul.
Morning. Am I coming through okay?
You're coming through beautifully. Hello everyone in Discord. Hello Nathan, it's good to be here. Oh, I'm pleased to hear that. That's great. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge horizon formerly known as the curve of the Earth? Oh, keen panel.
Not from Gatlinburg.
Not from where? Gatlinburg.
Yeah, Gatlinburg. It's a tourist trap here in Tennessee.
Famous for its giant rubber band ball, or?
It's Dolly Parton country. Dolly
Parton.
County.
Oh, I like Dolly Parton. Especially her breasts. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety? Nope. Wow. Keen panel. John's fiddling around with his mute button. Server muting himself and then unserver muting himself. You trying to figure out Discord there, John? Clearly not. I lost Discord. This isn't a very good live start. I'm sorry, people watching. I don't know why it's going so slowly, and I'm not getting any response from anyone in Discord. Can I have a mic check from Discord? Truth be told, there we go. I can hear his mic. First time I'm pleased for background interference.
Sorry about that, Nathan.
No, it's okay. I'd rather know that Discord's actually working. Hello, Arwin.
Hello, good afternoon.
Oh, it is a good afternoon now you're here because you've just done 2 hours of your own live show, so you're definitely warmed up. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety? Arwin?
No, definitely not. And if there was, there would be all these kinds of consequences that the people that say there is can't seem to recognize. And we've identified that a while ago as a mind virus, the coriolis mind virus, to be precise.
Indeed, a denial of their rhetoric that we have 15 degrees now turn of the Earth underneath things not attached. They deny that, and we disclaim that as coriolis mind virus, which is coriolis virus for short.
Yep.
On that, guys. I've seen a couple of videos, right? And the one that stood out for me the last couple of months was the one from David Blaine. Anybody seen that one?
David Blaine?
It was like a good couple of minutes. Yeah, David Blaine, the musician.
Oh, okay. Tell us more.
Yeah, he did this whole ascension thing where he went up. I don't know how high, but I mean, he had balloons attached to him, and then he went high up. But there was like a good portion of the actual video where they showed the ground, the Earth, and where he actually initially launched from, which is like I think it was a airplane landing strips or something. But he was dropping something. I think it was weights or something that he dropped down. But for that whole portion, they was showing down on that landing strip, and you can demonstrably see that thing was not moving. I mean, there's nothing moving under that guy.
Indeed. However, the Globe claim is that they have a non-inertial spinning reference frame in the form of a turning Earth that turns underneath things not attached to exhibit 15 degrees an hour deviation. Now, obviously, their examples are very short-lived, like footballs curving through goals from the perception of the person watching because it's claimed Earth turns underneath at 15 degrees an hour, or the claim that snipers have to account with their long-range shots for Earth turning underneath them at 15 degrees an hour. But of course, that would mean that Earth turns underneath drones and helicopters and hot air balloons at 15 degrees an hour, and we would notice that, because things would be drifting away at 1,000 miles an hour on the equator. So if you launched a drone into the air on the equator, not because drones can fly away at 1,000 miles an hour, but because it's claimed Earth turns underneath the drone at 15 degrees an hour, it would appear to fly away from you at 1,000 miles an hour if this effect actually happened. Now, we don't observe Earth turning underneath anything. Now, when that obvious demonstration that we don't have Earth turn, as claimed with 15 degrees an hour drift, the opponents will tell us that we wouldn't expect to see drift. Where would you get such an idea? Earth and atmosphere travel together. There is no 15 degrees an hour drift. They're not drifting apart. They're moving together. As we assume Earth's turning, of course. Flying in the face of a claim that we actually have Coriolis effect to observe, and that's their claim proof we spin. So their denial of this claim that we have proof we spin in the form of Coriolis deflection is denied, and we have labelled that the Coriolis virus, a denial of the 15 degrees an hour claim to prove Earth spins, merely because we can demonstrate it doesn't happen. So they have to deny that it would happen. Where would we get such an idea? We have people like Simon Dan who will tell us that you and your reference frames are ruined when they're the only ones claiming them, and they claim there's 15 degrees an hour drift with 2 reference frames, not us. But that, again, is an example of the Coriolis virus, a denial of this 15 degrees an hour drift we should see, claimed by Neil deGrasse Tyson. Moving on. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
No.
What is it?
Not really. But yeah, people will still have trouble not trying to reify the visuals of the sun into a physical object in a presumed to be specific location. It's very tough to basically step away from that baseline assumption approach based on physicality assumption bias.
Did you want to add something, Stan? Is that right?
Aramis, I was just simply saying no evidence here, but would love to pick apart their evidence if they bring it to the table.
Did anybody catch that? Say that again, please.
No evidence here.
Oh, fair enough. Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Nope. It's a reification fallacy. Relative density is all we need to explain the workings of the passive displacement that happens in the realm. It does not explain why the directions, it just describes how it does that. The cause of the displacement by presenting a model that we can actually physically test in the real world and then prove the cause of the effect, which is what science is. There's nothing else we need. Anything else that might be conjured up is like, oh, but there's this microscopic little thing that adds to it and causes the direction. Yeah, none of that has ever been proven. And thus anything but relative density remains a reification fallacy.
Several people sent me and discussed with me and messaged me, emailed me, you name it, about some comments from Bob Nodell on Globebusters. And while there was so much personal stuff attached to the comments, my attitude was fairly straightforward. Arwen and I actually discussed this at length last night. My attitude is the personal stuff you can all leave behind. I don't care about any of it. But the arguments, I'm definitely keen and excited that they're actually being discussed. Now, there was a specific example that was laid in front of me, and I just want to address that in specific reference to this housekeeping question, any scientific evidence of gravity. So the example given by Bob was about the double slit experiments, and he said that the slit detectors are man-made, therefore it's double standards to assert that we need scientific evidence when you bandy around, or whatever words he used, I don't know, I only listened to it once, the double slit experiment. So I just want to go through what qualifies something as a scientific experiment. And again, I want to thank Bob for bringing it up, because it's important that it gives me an excuse to discuss this now. So no personal vitriol, no moaning about view figures or any of that nonsense. Just the subject. The discussion point in this instance is a minor misunderstanding from Bob about the scientific method, which is great because it means I get a chance to discuss it. So thank you very much, Bob Nodell. And also thank you for the mention of my show. Really appreciate the advert. Anyway, first step in the scientific method is to observe natural phenomenon. Now, when we describe people using man-made devices like gyroscopes or pendulums on the globe side, we're describing that as their phenomenon that they are discussing to figure out the cause of. Now, that is the thing that must be naturally occurring. So it's entirely about the physical and natural world. That's what science is primarily interested in. Natural science. The physical and natural world. And science is the establishment of the cause of an effect. And that effect is the thing that must be observed in nature. Now, in the case of the double slit experiment, diffraction is the effect. So it's a, not necessarily on this specific subject, but it's a long series of experiments that have been done that lead to the double slit experiment that are all being done with the same banner above them, if you like, which is light. Now, in that instance, the naturally occurring phenomena is the diffraction of light. Why does it do that? What is the cause of the diffraction? Now, establishing why that's happening can have an experimental apparatus set up, and that can have as many man-made devices as you like, so long as the device itself isn't the phenomena that you're studying. For example, a gravimeter or a pendulum. Those are man-made devices. They're not occurring in nature. So to try and ascertain the course of a slit detector, it's like, no, the double slits phenomenon isn't a slit detector. That's not the phenomenon being studied. Diffraction of light's the phenomenon that's being studied. And the ascertaining of the cause requires figuring out which slit it went through. And upon acquisition of the knowledge of which slit it went through, you can collapse the wave function interference pattern, whatever you want to call it, the many bars of light, into an actualization, i.e. one bar for one strip, one slit. So that's the collapse of the wave function, the collapse of that pattern, and that pattern is the diffraction of light. That is the phenomena being studied. So it's not the case that you can say, well, it's got a man-made device in the experiment. Yeah, it has. So we can figure out which slit it's going through, but not figure out the functionality of a slit detector. That's not the phenomenon. So, just to summarize, in terms of what makes something scientifically valid, it's having a phenomena to study in the first place and figuring out what caused that phenomena. In the case of the double slit quantum eraser, it's figuring out what's the cause of the light diffraction. And the established cause, by way of varying and manipulating that assumed cause of the effect, is knowledge of which path it went through. Which slit did it go through? When you know, you cause the wave function to collapse. Ergo, you have established the cause of an effect in nature. The effect being the light diffraction, the cause being knowledge of the which path. Well, those two things give you a validated scientific experiment. And from that, you can develop theory. So, it's not the slit detector that's the phenomenon. It's light diffraction. And that's true with anything that you want to establish in science. It's just a natural phenomena that you observe, and then you try and figure out the cause of it. Man-made devices don't fit into that bracket because you already know what caused it, and man made it.
Right.
Nathan, are most experiments going to be with a man-made device?
Not necessarily.
Can I give...
No, not necessarily. You could easily find, you could stumble across a hot spring and you go, I wonder what causes that to boil. Phenomena, boiling water. Cause, heat. Well, to establish that, you didn't necessarily have to find anything man-made. You could find a naturally occurring receptacle for the water and find a naturally occurring heat source, and then you wouldn't have to make a thing, right? And you could still cause it to boil, and you could still validate your alternative hypothesis and reject your null, so long as you'd formulated it in the first place. The man-made devices bit is kind of inconsequential. It's part of the apparatus to test your assumed cause. And in that process, all that is required is that you vary and manipulate that which you assume has caused the effect. And if you vary that which you assume caused the effect, and it causes it, you have validated it. Now, part of the apparatus might or might not be man-made. It's not really that relevant. All that is relevant is that you varied your presumed cause and it caused the effect. That's it. Hey, Neil.
Right. Brian, you mean. It's also because if by that standard, if it wasn't exactly like this, then you could never prove that water boils at 100 degrees, because the 100 degrees can only be established through a man-made device known as the thermometer.
You don't need that bit. You don't need the mathematical.
Exactly.
You don't need the. It's qualitative rather than quantitative. What caused it? Heat. Well, you can, with an arbitrary construction of a temperature with numbers, which we've devised to decide what number corresponds to how much mercury is how high in a tube. Well, that's completely arbitrary. The cause is heat. Now, you can go on to say, well, how much heat? How long does the heat have to apply? Yeah, that's quantitative, as opposed to what caused it. Because if you say acid content caused the boiling water, and then go on to describe how much of the acid's going to cause it to boil, well, you're qualifying how much of something that isn't actually the cause because you haven't established it. How much of the cause? Yeah, you can worry about that afterwards, but you've got to actually establish the cause first.
Right.
I just want to add something here. With regards to the whole Bob thing and everybody, I agree with you, Nathan. It's good discussions to have, but just to add on that, I'm not sure if everybody remember Spurs' debate with that PhD, right? I mean, maybe Brian can add here, but I'm not sure if that PhD referenced a gravimeter that they were using, but he specifically said, right, he sends students out in the field, and what they do with this device, right, is they test the various densities of the ground. That's specifically what came out of his mouth, right? And what he did was he buries something somewhere, and he sends them out to find it. But he specifically recalled or said that he sends them out to test the various densities of the ground, and that will help them find whatever they're looking for. Just wanted to add that.
Hey,
You wanna
everybody.
Go ahead, Brian.
Well, Nathan, the thing about it is that, and this is something that Jaron didn't understand. He understands it now, I think. When I was saying in the debate, asking which one to refer to which gravimeter he was talking about, I said, is it the absolute or the relative? Because the two of them work they're two slightly different apparatuses. They don't work the same. The relative works more off of accelerometers, which is mostly a motion detector. So I don't know. The whole thing it's a bit convoluted mess, because even Jaron did some research on it. I heard him speaking on Friday, on Sunday on Glowbusters, and he was saying like that the software that goes into these things is all pre-assuming a globe and all kinds of global nonsense. That, there was a lot of stuff going into it. But you're right, that guy Tony, you can't remember his own, PhD Tony, who was on Fight the Flat Earth. He did say he was burying the test mass.
Tony Purcell.
Purcell, that's right. Tony Purcell written, that's right, Nathan. And he did say he was burying what he called a test, whatever mass is. But basically he was just burying something of weight, some kind of weight. And he said his students were finding it. So, but you could do that with a metal detector type thing. Do you know what I mean? You could literally do that you could literally do that with a metal detector type situation. You could find the test mass, what he would call a test mass. I'm saying the word mass now, sorry. But you could do that with a metal detector. So the whole thing is convoluted.
Yeah, no, but my point was that he specifically said the density. They were testing for the density. I'll find that video again, and I'll share with everybody. But he specifically said that they were looking at the different densities of the ground, and that helped them find it. Nothing to do with any metal or magnetic or any of that type of thing. He was specifically talking about the density of the ground. So that to me pointed that obviously the ground has different various densities, right? And some other way this mechanism, right, is picking up the various densities, and that's how the students are finding the thing that he's burying.
You're right, he did say the density. That's right, I remember it now. He did say that, and I remember catching on to that at the time myself. Yeah, he did say that it was the various densities that was being picked up. I do remember that, yeah, you're right.
Anything more to add on this? Not, we'll move on.
I might add one small thing about the gravimeter. Not so much about the gravimeter, but about a misunderstanding. It's in the line, I think, of what yourself and Arwen were just talking about, is that a lot of people don't understand the difference between a natural phenomenon and that's occurring naturally, and a natural phenomenon that you're seeing within an apparatus. Or sorry, a phenomenon you're seeing within an apparatus, which is not a natural phenomenon. But I mean, even Bob from Glowbusters was saying that if the he was talking about things like this, and he didn't seem to understand the double slit experiment, where he doesn't realize the natural phenomenon of that was diffraction. So he was saying, well, why is the double slit and the quantum eraser such a big deal when they're using man-made apparatuses? Yeah, but the original natural phenomenon is diffraction, for the double slit anyway, which will probably follow on then after that.
We did actually cover that just before you joined, and again, just to round out, props to Glowbusters for keeping the conversation going, keeping it on topic, and giving us something to respond to that's on point. I will add that at this stage there is still some bad blood amongst some of the people discussing this, and I'm hoping, and have been up until now, to intervene and just say no, stop. This needs to be kept on subject. Let's forget the ad homs and what people don't and do understand. Obviously there's a limit. I'm not going to interrupt you when you say Bob doesn't understand this or that. Yeah, minor personal slights I can cope with, but 10 straight minutes of personal crap about something that's off topic doesn't give the audience any time to actually digest the points of the subject. In this particular instance, we're talking about what is and what is not science. What makes a phenomenon worthy of calling an experiment when you study its cause? Well, in this instance, it's something that's occurred in nature. That's Brian's point. A naturally occurring phenomenon. Does light diffract? Yeah, absolutely, without question, that's an occurrence in nature. You don't have to go very far to see it occurring. Now, that is something that's worthy of scientific inquiry. The cause of a man-made device isn't, because you already know the cause. A man made it. Simple. Therefore not open to scientific inquiry, because what's the cause of gravimeter? A man made it. You haven't observed that in nature. Take me to your naturally occurring gravimeter. There aren't any. It's not a naturally occurring phenomena, therefore sits outside the scientific method. Excellent opportunity to summarise that, because That's where we win. Where we win is where we understand, on the flat earth side, what is and is not science. Understanding what is and is not science leaves you to understand where the globe zealot claims are asserting pseudoscience where none is actually in existence. Well, if you're going to assert science, then you need to have naturally occurring phenomena, independent variable, alternative and null, actualized in an experiment. That's science. If you haven't got it, but you're claiming you've got it, what you've actually got is pseudoscience. And that's what we're up against with the globe. Now, with time, hopefully more people recognise what is and what is not science. And therefore, expand it out. I hope there's plenty of people who watch the show that do this, that expand out that principle into general day-to-day information that's disseminated through whatever means about what science says. This is universally true, not just true for the globe paradigm, it's universally true for a lot of crap that people claim. You've only got to look at it with the clear understanding of what is and is not science, and you can say, oh, this current nonsense doesn't scare me. What's that you say? Epidemiological studies? That's statistical. I'm not interested. I want to presume cause and a phenomenon. Show me the phenomenon first. This thing occurring in nature. And if you can show it me, then I'll maybe pay attention to when you think you've got the cause of it. Till then, I'm not really that concerned about statistical abstract studies. They don't scare me. It's not real. Reality. Naturally occurring phenomenon. Those are things you can study with science. Knowing that means you can go forth and be a lot more chilled about the nonsense that comes out of people's mouths. The reifications of what science says. When it doesn't have lungs, it doesn't have a tongue. It's a method. Just know the method and you'll be much better off in life. You'll be a lot less stressed about a lot of the nonsense that gets punted. And you were all taught it. You can all verify it. You can go and revise it. You learnt it in 5th grade. Everybody's acutely aware of it. And the reason we're acutely aware of it is because it's powerful. The tool is empirical. Not an if, but, or maybe at the end of the method. An established cause. Well, once you've got that, you can make certain statements and you can make declarations that are true. So it's very powerful. And people have recognised that and want to hijack it and use it to tell their stories. They're just so stories. And sometimes those just so stories start with man-made devices claimed to be phenomenon so they can be labelled as science and convince you, who's been taught what science actually is, an empirical method of establishing cause in 5th grade, that means it's true. It's a magic word then rather than a method. Science says blah, blah, blah. Oh, really? Well, then I better understand that that's true and empirical. No, not if you knew what science actually was. You'd be asking them what the phenomena was. What was your presumed cause? What was your null hypothesis? And then you'd very quickly find they don't have any science and they fall on their ass when they try and give it you. Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
Not yet.
No.
The body of science, Nathan.
Science doesn't have a body, it doesn't have tongue, it doesn't have lungs, it's a method.
So why were we told the body of science proves everything all those years ago? That's a little weird. We don't hear that much anymore, huh?
No, we don't hear that much. The general public does. They're always being told what science says. Yeah. No viable hypotheses from any of these people? We asked for viable...
not right now.
Go ahead, Brian.
I'm just saying, not right now today. Probably not tomorrow.
They've got plenty of phenomenon though, right? Plenty of things happening in
Loads.
nature to be studied in those fields.
The problem with their phenomenon is any story that me or you decide to make up about it, Nathan, is just as viable as their story because they can't prove it either. That's the problem, isn't it?
Okay. Arwin, can you give us a quick story about why a supernova, that would be a light getting a bit brighter and then disappearing altogether, why that occurs? Can you just give us a quick story about why that happens? Non-heliocentric, please.
Oh, non-heliocentric. Oh.
Yes, please.
I don't really know for sure, but if I'd had to quickly estimate it based on my lore of what the celestial lights are, I'd say that for some reason, the light manifest, however that works, probably electrically, is for some reason basically, giving more output and then retracting that output in that very specific angular location in relation to the observer. That would be the described phenomenon. I would not know how to actively manipulate it.
Don't worry about that.
Just
Don't
yet.
worry about that. Just give us the story. Don't need to manipulate any presumed cause of the phenomenon. What we're going to do is get the phenomenon described. We're going to say a light's in the sky and then it disappears. Then you're going to give your just so story. And then we're going to reiterate your just so story and say, therefore, we'll see a light disappear in the sky. And we do, therefore your story's true. That's how it works.
What?
You will give me an observation of something occurring, a phenomenon.
All right.
It will then be followed by a description, just so story, of why you say it occurred. Then you will reiterate why you say it occurred and give a therefore we will see lights disappear in the sky, what we call supernova. Now, that's an affirming the consequent formal logical fallacy with an assumption based on an actual phenomenon that hasn't been validated with cause through science. Just a story describing something you've seen and then saying, well, because my story, therefore we'll see that thing, and we do. Therefore my story's true.
Okay. I feel kind of uncomfortable you using me as an example for this, since I probably wouldn't do this sort of thing anymore. I might have 2 years ago, but these days I'd be very careful to basically create a just so story and then try to reaffirm it like that.
Oh, I was going to do it for
What
you.
if I gave you theme music?
What, maybe like the Star Wars dark theme? The march.
Pretty much, yep.
Quick shout out
Right.
to Bobby Zines, who said, FED brings out the desperation of Globers. I agree. They'll come here and tell us how we're part of a cult and how we already know it's a sphere. And it's like, if that was true, you wouldn't be here. You'd be getting on with your life completely confident in that fact, not in the slightest bit concerned this show even exists. But yet here you are, chasing us around, demanding our attention.
Right, and coming back every day for years to share with everybody the important message that the flat Earth debate is dying for 3 years in a row, every day. Yeah.
Indeed. Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
No.
P waves and
P
S
waves and S waves, which in practice have turned out to be grossly inaccurate on every step. So, yeah. There have been attempts, very little sign that there would be any success in the near future trying to attempt to actually confirm it.
Any evidence of the R value, that would be Earth radius?
At best, you would have disproven the radius.
Right. It's really inconsequential, you know? It's like, what does it matter? It's at best radius is wrong. It's not like it's the fundamental value inserted in every globe model ever devised. That's all, you know?
No biggie. You lose that, you just lose the whole heliocentric model. Don't worry about it.
That's causing quite a lot of cognitive pain in our opponents at the moment. It was actually an epic pre-show, so we had Father of a Stolen Child, John. I can't remember what his name is in Discord. Nevertheless, he was discussing with us his transition of recent times from globe-believing fundy zealot trying to weasel in and lie to himself about how to presuppose the R value, to realising the black swan leaves them without a physical tangent point, realising that that means the entire model collapses, and then moving on to being on Flat Earth Debate, telling us exactly how that transition occurred. Really good conversation. So if you're a member, that'll come out just after the live show finishes, or an hour later or so. Or tomorrow, if you're watching this live and you want to know it's on the second channel, subscribe today to Nathan Oakley, link underneath this live stream. any evidence that you can have, gas pressure, without the necessary antecedent of a container.
Yeah. To this day, I still think that this very question is the most glaring, painful weapon ever devised among the arguments against the globe. Because it's so in your face, it's really hard to even misinterpret it. Like, it's tough to even create a just so story to try and get around it because it's so immediately in your face. Like, almost everybody that hears the argument and just waits a few seconds to let it sink in will be shocked. I was shocked the first few times, and now I'm talking about it over a decade ago when I first heard these arguments from other people that would just like, it would shock me in my boots. Like, I would be thinking, oh, globe, and it could be like this, and they haven't figured it out yet. And we're discovering, and they were like, yeah, but the vacuum can exist. Like, the gas would expand in all directions. I'm like, I saw that demonstrated in physics class. I don't know how to answer this. So it's a shocking argument, really. The most shocking of all, I think.
You were discussing on your show earlier this morning about how people had told you Earth was flat when you were a globe head, and you were just there in stunned amazement being told it's not a globe. Just interesting that you were chatting about it earlier, and then John also did the same. Maybe he was watching your show.
Could be.
Well, I think
I've been confronted with it many times. I've told it like 5 times over my life, and yeah, all of them I was like, yeah, that's very interesting. I like the idea of it. However, I believe in a fucking globe. So leave
no
me
swearing.
alone. I'm gonna go to space.
Trying to keep the show clean. Go ahead, Brian.
Sorry.
Thanks, Nathan. Yeah, no, I was just saying, like the argument we often have with the globers is that if we had a vacuum next to the gas pressure would all dissipate. But and you've detailed this before, Nathan, and several times you detailed it. But a bigger argument is, how do we have a gas pressure gradient that formed within a vacuum? It's completely impossible.
Yeah, you don't.
Exactly.
Unless, of course, you have some rebellious gas particles.
That narrative kind of went away for a while, eh?
Yeah, I know. Shout out to the rebellious gas particles.
Let's have a quick summary. So these gas particles left Earth, travelled into the sky, and on their way, before getting to an area that they could potentially expand into, they slowed down and stopped and said, you know what? These natural laws that dictate that we're going to just continue moving in the direction we're travelling until we collide with either another particle or the walls of a container, that is not going to apply to us. Girl power, we are staying where we are. We're going to burn our bras at the Kármán line and we will say no more. Second law of thermodynamics. That will not apply here.
But don't forget, Nathan, they also put on weight at the same time. Don't forget about that.
My bad. They all put on weight.
No, they all got depressed and went down, go boom boom. All of them.
That's true. That's why they went depressed and went down, go boom boom like bouncy balls poured into a fish tank. They got to the Kármán line, stopped, put on weight, and then fell back down, go boom boom.
Yeah, but the problem is, even though all joking aside, there would not be a second law of thermodynamics. All gas molecules. Nothing forms. No life is created in a vacuum. Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, because there wouldn't be people around to think of the second law of thermodynamics.
Well, would there even be gas particles? Would there be gas?
No.
Where would gas come from?
Well, you can't have any kind of chemical reaction unless everything is under pressure, because the molecules would be so far apart, no chemical process could occur.
But the forming of gas comes from a natural cycles of the Earth. The Earth itself, to even form that gas, wouldn't be able to do anything like that within a vacuum, would it, Paul?
Yeah, nothing can form. Nothing can be close enough together to form anything. Even it's funny how hydrogen is the first gas created, So if it's colliding and bouncing apart, how did it come together to form other particles? How did that happen?
Well, I mean,
That's
is that what they say? Sorry, Nathan, go on.
It wasn't me, it was truth be told, but go ahead, truth be told.
Thanks, guys. That was that Professor Robitaille or Dr. Robitaille's argument as well. I mean, he's a global, right? And he was arguing against what's that guy? Stupid guy's name? Professor Dave or something. He was arguing against that guy, and his whole argument was gas pressure, right? And that it's the whole heliocentric model and what happens with the sun and the claim what the sun is rubbish based on the second law of thermodynamics.
Yeah, that's been covered by QE before. They have an increase in output as you get further away from it, akin to, you know, oh, this bonfire's a bit hot, I'll back away. And then you spontaneously combust because the output's got higher as you backed away from it. It's a violation of the second law of thermodynamics, how they describe the sun. But the sun itself is a burning ball of gas in a vacuum, in violation of the natural law called the thermodynamic second law. Well, same applies to the Earth. To summarise what was just discussed between Paul and Brian, it's beautifully summarised by a quantum eraser question. How do you get gas pressure in the first place? So if they attack you with this straw man of how do you have a gas pressure gradient, it's like, well, you can't have a gas pressure gradient without a container either. Where'd you get the gas pressure in the first place?
Where'd you get the gas? Isn't that it?
Yeah, same thing. You know, the gas would immediately come out of the ground and dissipate into space if there wasn't a container of some description. There must be a container, there must be containment for us to have gas pressure. It's the necessary antecedent for gas pressure. A necessary antecedent, I should say.
But
absolutely.
My point being is, could the ground even get to the point of being able to produce gases?
Maybe, but they'd just immediately dissipate.
Yeah.
Exactly, and I hate to bring that Dr. Robitaille up again, but his argument, if you look at that video, right, his argument, he refers to, or he makes an example of gas pressure on Earth, but you should see the animation, right, on that video. He has some sort of container, right, pressing down on the gas. So the whole, I think he's just delusional at the moment.
Yeah,
You're
a lot
saying
of them
this
will.
guy was going at Professor Dave. What was his beef with Professor Dave? Like,
That
'cause
Professor
you said
Dave's
they're
a
both
clown.
Globers.
That he's a clown and doesn't know what he's talking about.
Well, yeah, that I know, but I don't know the new guy. What's his name? Robitaille. What was his beef with him? Because you said they're both Globers. That's curious.
But
Yeah,
Dr.
it's
Robitaille.
isn't his name Robitaille? Yeah.
Yeah. What
think
was
it's the same
his
guy, Chocolate.
what was his argument with Dave? Not calling him Professor.
Well, his argument was basically that, same as Nathan just said, Dave called him a clown. Yeah.
It was the sun, the second law of thermodynamics violation description of the physicality of the sun. So that's his specific point, and he's using the second law of thermodynamics. From what I understand from what you've just explained, it was also covered by Quantum Eraser. I've not actually watched his video, so I'm gleaming this from what other people have told me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Dr. Robitaille, Chocolate, he, for the past few years, has been basically saying that what the stories about the sun and the sky have to be wrong because you can't have gas pressure within a vacuum. It can't be done. He says so. The sun has to not be a gas. And he also pointed out that with stellar spectroscopy, obviously it's not controlled, but with stellar spectroscopy, the orb is getting a continuous spectrum of the sun, which can only come from a solid. So that I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not
So
saying the
he's
sun
still-
is a solid. I'm just saying, like, yeah.
So
And
he
Professor
thinks
Dave
he-
called him on that. Sorry, what?
So he still thinks it's a vacuum up there, but the sun can't be a gas because you can't have a gas just chilling in a vacuum. So he thinks it's something else. That's what you're saying? Either
Yeah,
plasma
that's-
ball or some type of solid something.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
I got you.
Professor Dave was calling him out
Exactly.
on it, and he came back to Professor Dave. Sorry, Nathan. What?
No, that was the same guy in Discord. You said exactly.
Oh, I made a video about him. It's my second video down, my second last video. I made a video and I sent it. I put it up on his channel, like on a comment if he wanted to watch it. And I just basically said like what he was saying made sense, but it also makes sense for the Earth. You know, we're supposed to have gas pressure, so you know, I attacked gravity and its validity, and we're supposed to have gas pressure in a vacuum too. So how do you equate the argument for the sun, but then not look at your own world?
I was just gonna say, I was just thinking that, like, so how does he apply that to the rest of the nonsensical
He doesn't.
heliocentric model?
He doesn't. That would cause cognitive pain, so that doesn't actually occur. Just for Sleeping Warriors come into the chat late, he says, wait, no, intermolecular bonds for mass and no acceleration due to gravity, etc., etc. Well, you've got to understand, Sleeping Warrior, we were discussing the narrative of the rebellious gas particles, and after they've got to the Kármán line and burnt their bras, they stick together, metaphorically, and that gives them weight. You know, them sticking together, the rebellious particles, one for all and all for one. And, you know, eating a lot of cake, metaphorically, makes them gain weight. And then they fall down, go boom boom, like bouncy balls poured into a fish tank. So you can call those, you know, keeping together like, you know, maybe feminists keep together. You know, you can call those bonds and just make an analogy between the, you know, the people wanting to be part of a team together and intermolecular bonds. You can equivocate those easily.
I wonder if they had like a leader, like a Darth particle.
What, the first rebellious gas particles? Before all of you violated the second law, I was here violating the second law. I knew about the Force before any of you.
Exactly. The Force. Exactly.
Gravity be upon you. We are Borg. We are as one. We will gain weight and go down, go boom boom.
Yeah, because the Darth particle was like, why would we want to act like we are like gas and expand and disperse into the vacuum when we could stay here? We got this beautiful round ball, you know, in this vacuum. Let's just hang out here. Why not?
Resistance is futile.
No, Neil,
Yeah, exactly.
no, this is gravity and weight, not resistance. God, what's wrong with you?
Wait a minute though, Nathan. Don't the gas particles have friction against one another? That's how they turn with the Earth. So
You said Borg.
Did you say
I said
something
what?
about...
Nathan said Borg, and I said resistance is futile.
Well, resistance is typically friction when it comes to physics. So when
Okay.
in the physics world. So I'm trying to help the Globers out. Since
Yeah,
there's no one
it's
around to put them in
a
their
very
position.
It's a useful segue into, you know, non-stupidity about rebellious gas particles stopping at the Kármán line in defiance of the second law of thermodynamics and segueing nicely into elastic collisions. So this assumption that we're describing with the farcical nature of the rebellious gas particles burning their bra and falling down, go boom boom after gaining weight because of the force of gravity, that's not a force, but you can think of as a force, actually has the reality of elastic collisions. No, there's not friction. There's no net loss or gain when they collide into each other. So, no, we have these things called elastic, as opposed to inelastic collisions, detailed quite admirably by Quantum Eraser and Adam Meakin in the last 6 months, several times. So, no, there is no friction between these particles. No, they're not moving along with the Earth as it spins, but that's not even their rhetoric. They claim Earth turns underneath the 15 degrees now, but that's a different subject. No friction. Elastic collisions. Unless you're a rebellious particle. Just to get the subject back on the jovial mood that it was on and I've ruined.
Oh, I got it, Nathan. They are trans particles. They can change their nature. That's what it is.
No, what's actually happening is the bonds, metaphorical bonds between a community of rebellious gas particles, used as an analogy with intermolecular bonds. Sometimes those analogous community bonds cause community friction. And I'm going to say that friction amongst the community, sometimes people don't like what Darth Particle has to say about the Force. Well, that friction is what eradicates the elastic collisions. Because obviously, if people are bonded, there's going to be friction, right? I mean, particles burning their bras, going down, go boom, boom with weight, with social bonds that cause friction. Yeah, we're all clear. The narrative has continued.
I love the Darth Particle.
Yeah, we've got.
I copyright that right now.
It was part of the story now. We've definitely got a Darth Particle, and we've definitely got analogous intermolecular bonds with social bonds, and we've got definite friction as opposed to elastic collisions with the social bonds and the social friction. So these things are all easily comparable to make gas go down, go boom, boom when they gain weight. Because that's what happens in this fantasy world of a sky vacuum we don't have.
Seems legit. Yeah. Checks out.
What a wonderful fantasy world the heliocentric world is.
Yeah, well, isn't there a character in this Star Wars called Darth Maul anyway?
Darth Maul, but not Darth Particle.
Yes, I name him Darth Particle.
The most rebellious of all rebellious gas particles. I'm glad we've extended that narrative slightly. Every time it comes up, the story gets a little bit longer about the rebellious gas particles at the Kármán line.
Brothers.
I have to come up with a illustration or something.
Storyboard.
Before somebody steals this story from us.
Yeah, we need to storyboard this. If you're a cartoonist, because I'm sure there's so many cartoonists watching Flat Earth Debate, then maybe you could storyboard it for us. Plus, we need an actual plot. At this point, we've got a bit of character development. We've got a vague location for the story to take place, but we don't actually have any story. You know, is it going to be a love story? Boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl back again. Maybe we could have that between one of the rebellious gas particles who's burning her bra and staying at the Kármán line. Maybe she has a little intimate affair with Darth Particle, and that causes the collapse. You know, that causes the friction to begin. I don't know. You know, we've got to actually have a narrative to storyboard, though, a story. There's only so many stories out there.
Remember, I gave it a little bit of a story back there a little while ago because somebody needed to measure the geometric horizon that we can't see because we have an atmosphere, right? So
vaguely
maybe it
remember
was
this.
Darth
Vaguely.
Particle and his rebel forces.
Yeah, that's not really a padded out plot. We need an actual story. As I say, there's a limited number of stories, you know, that actually get told, and most stories you'll ever hear are like a variation of one of about, I don't know, 20 different stories that are in existence, various different fables and biblical. What do they call them? Paul, you'd know. What's it called when Jesus is sat down just telling a story that's obviously made up?
It's a parable.
Parable. That's the word. Parables. Old folklore, Hollywood movies. There's only so many stories to be told, but you've got to decide which one you're telling. Sure, we'll move it on in future. We've run out of steam on the gas particles, clearly.
Are you talking like a Thelma and Louise of gas particles?
It could be. Could be.
Yeah.
Are you going to pad that out, or are you just throwing out random movie names?
Thelma and Louise have beef with Carmen. They get to the Carmen line. They're like, nope.
Yeah, that's good.
Quiet on the fundy side in the last few days. I wonder what's changed. I mean, like, noticeably quiet. Maybe it was the Tim Osman slaying on last Thursday's show that's discouraged them from coming in this week's shows. We had a lot of internal.
I listened to it again yesterday, and it was just, I don't know, it's just getting funnier every time I listen to it, just more pathetic. all the times. I don't even know what you're talking about. It's like, bro, are you okay? Do you know where you are right now and what year it is? Like, how are you really telling us nobody claims the horizon is the curvature of the Earth? Like, what are you doing? What's the matter? It's almost like just want to tap him on the shoulder, like, "Are you okay, buddy?" I don't know.
Mark Sargent
I
once
think he
summarised this situation a few years back when it kind of quietened down for a limited period of time. And Mark was saying that when that happens, what you end up having is like tussles in the trenches, infighting. In other words, if there's so little to combat on the opposing side, which is the circumstance at the moment, everything's wrapped up. We've got all the arguments wrapped up. What happens is the troops get twitchy and start fighting amongst themselves. So at the moment, if you're, hoping for drama between ballbusters and globebusters, you won't find it, but you will find that it's hopefully, at least for the time being kept under control and generating some decent conversations, as opposed to, chaos amongst the ranks. But it's been a long time since there was chaos in this community. Now it's a lot more settled and things actually can progress with a little bit of blood in the water. Every now and again someone falls out and they get dragged off to the makeshift showers to beat the crap out of each other. But hopefully that's not going to happen in this particular instance. And I feel that the last few shows, in spite of the bloody personal stuff that's thrown around amongst people in our own community against each other for personal reasons that I'm not interested in, I think generally there's actually been a bit of progress, a bit of a moving forward in terms of things that we don't agree on. And that's only possible because there's a limited interaction at the moment from the Globe side. They've got so little to offer. We've got time to be chatting amongst ourselves about things we might disagree on. That's so cool. It's a testament to the state of the Globe argument at the moment. Would you not agree?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, definitely. I'm after asking Witsit to ask Jaron if he could have me on his show on Friday to discuss it further. So that might happen.
Excellent. Yeah, I hope things like this happen again because, back when we all started doing this, everyone was collaborating with everybody, and then over time people figured out where they disagreed with each other and people drifted apart. Now, all I see as happening now, as much as everyone who's involved in it that has got personal issues, is like, this is that person's behaviour and blah, blah. It's like, nah, you're not just ignoring them, though, are you? You're involving yourself with that person, and therefore that interaction, if that's what you wanted, can only be good, even though you've got a very negative spin on it in terms of the personal interaction. But the arguments, they are definitely getting discussed, though, aren't they? These things are coming to a head and being discussed, and I hope, at least on our own side, people see that as positive, as I do. I see this as a very positive thing moving forward. There's interaction between us where there wasn't for the last couple of years, which is a bit sad, really, in my opinion.
Yeah, I want to add to that. I mean,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I've been watching you guys for like a couple of years now, right? Ever since 2017, both sides, right? And I continue to watch FED Daily as well as Globusters, Charianism, everybody. And I definitely see this as positive, right? It means that, like you said, Globe has nothing to offer for us anymore, and not even an argument. So we're trying to figure some of the things out, and that's where I want to say kudos to Bob for trying to do that, right? He's an amazing guy, and for me, there's no sides, right? And I know you alluded to that on his last video, but for me, there's no sides. It's just, we can't agree on everything. We move forward, and if we disagree, we disagree and carry on. But this is definitely positive because the conversations are being had. Brian did an amazing job last week, and now this week it looks like there's going to be another discussion about it, which is just so awesome. Thanks,
Exactly.
guys.
The fact that we have the time to do it is a testament to the position on the Globe side. When in the last couple of years, if we had the opportunity to say, let's sit around a table together and actually get these things thrashed out. And hopefully, as I keep saying, the personal crap will be left on one side. But a lot of people are passionate about this subject, so there is quite a lot that even me saying, "Oh, hopefully I'll be a bit of a steam release valve in this and calm people down when they get angry about whatever they're arguing for, or about the person on a personal level." It's like, no, as long as the conversation's actually progressing in terms of the argument and the conversation gets heard, the point from the other side gets heard, the rebuttal gets heard, and then it gets furthered when the person who's obviously listening to it, even though they're not directly here sat with us, gets to hear that. Well, that's positive, as you keep saying, and I keep saying. I will look past a lot of the personal crap and hopefully calm it down, because it's just a bit of old blood in the water as far as I can tell. Anyway, I'm going to round out this live show and say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, this is where we bid you live viewers farewell. A massive, huge, enormous thank you to all of you who shared the show, smashed the super chat, commented, subscribed, and all that good stuff. Another massive thank you to today's Meet and Discord panels for making today's live show possible. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!
Excellent.
Yeah. I was just reading some of the comments underneath the debate from the other day, and some of the people are more on our side, like what we would say, and some of the people were more on the maybe Bob and Whitsett's side. But it was interesting. There was even one or two Globers in there commenting, and one or two. There was actually one in particular. He actually said, "No, Brian won that because of this, and this." It's like there's literally Globers listening to it, and the point I'm making about it, not that it didn't matter whether they said it was me or Whitsett, but the point is that they were actually listening to it and they weren't trolling, which was interesting. And these were people that I would have thought would have normally trolled in that situation, and they didn't. They just gave honest comments on it.
Interesting.
Which was good.
Yeah, very. Yeah, I'm very happy with the way things are going at the moment. I don't know about anybody else.
Yeah, we just have to keep it on topic, isn't it, Nathan? Just keep it on topic, keep it at the argument. Yep. It's not even an argument. It should just be a case of we go through all the steps and we'll define what can be proven and what can't be proven. And what can be is what we have. What can't be is what we have to discard. Isn't that true?
Hey, sometimes I like that soap opera stuff.
Well, yeah, again, from the clips that people were sending me, it's like, okay, there's a certain level of drama in that. And when people were pointing it out to me, I'm like, yeah, so what? Who cares? The fact that the discussion's being had with a little bit of bad blood in the water, I can look past that, But still getting discussed, though, right? The arguments come up, the rebuttals have come, now time for the responses. Hopefully things will move forward, so long as it doesn't descend into personal attacks and chaos.
Yeah, my intention on going on to Jaron's. Originally, I was going to look for a debate with Jaron because I wasn't sure where he stood on it, and he doesn't really like doing them kind of things. And Whitser kind of said to me, "Look, I don't think he'd go for that." So I said, "No." He said a conversation maybe, and I said, "Okay, we go for a conversation." And it's right. A conversation is better because Jaron is a logical kind of guy, and if he finds something that's true, he goes, "Okay, that's true." If he finds something that isn't true, he goes, "Okay, that isn't true." So it is definitely possible to have a very civil conversation with him. You know,
Well, he
no matter
doesn't
what your
agree. He
stance is.
doesn't agree with Bob on a lot of stuff. I know that.
No, that's one of the reasons I want to talk to him, because I want to see
Exactly. I think you'll
where he
get a lot.
stands.
I think you'll
Sorry.
do well with him.
Well, I hope he brings me onto the show first anyway, you know, that kind of way, and we have the conversation, because the conversation has to happen, not argument, because argument is not going anywhere. There's been argument for a good while and it's not gone anywhere. There's 2 or 3 years now where there's been a division up to a point because of argument on that topic.
Yeah, and as it's been discussed, when people have got fiery or, you know, too passionate about it, let's just say, I've said, look, this is a nice aside to be dealing with, you know, to actually be able to interact with their own side, regardless of on what level it's about. You know, moaning about the personal bits can be forgotten about. It's far, far nicer to be doing this than having to debate scumbags with any semblance of arguments, where all they actually have is an ad hom. There is no discussion because the points have already been annihilated. So it's just a constant rendition of the same thing that's been overturned many, 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 many times, and repeating and explaining to somebody on your opposing side how their argument's been debunked a million times before. And, you know, that stops being fun. But when you can actually start to interact with your own side and say, okay, well, clearly the Globe have got nothing. In terms of the bigger picture of how important this is, that's what I want people to really focus on, because for the person who's involved in it, it's the most important thing ever. Whereas it's like, okay, not really. We're in our own little pond, having a little discussion amongst ourselves. Well, the outside world beyond our little pond is the Western world thinking they're on a sphere still. That's the bigger picture. So let's not get too caught up into our own personal feelings and thoughts about some explanation for a part of the world that we actually inhabit, when it's still the case that the majority of the Western world think they're on a sphere. That's the bigger picture. Now, the fight will come to us eventually. You know, the good times of having these internal discussions won't last forever. Eventually, we'll all get distracted with something else. I've no doubt about that whatsoever. You know, it'll be something that is perceived as really important by their side, so they come to the table with it, only to have it annihilated as a fresh claim, and then repeatedly annihilated for the next 6 months thereafter. But when that happens, it means we won't be talking about globebusters. And people who are here that may not be aware of globebusters, or maybe have strayed away from them, might go back. Well, that's nice. Same for me when it's Bob talking about the Flat Earth debate team. Sometimes a little bit derogatory, but it doesn't matter. He's still talking about it. People are recognising that there's an alternative show that's out there that's talking about the same subject, who may have differing views. Now, obviously, they're going to hear it with the passion that comes with the disagreement about whatever views have been expressed on this show. Doesn't matter. The views are being expressed, and people are getting talked about where they weren't being talked about before. They were just getting slagged off by a load of globehead fundies. Well, which would I prefer? Well, I'd much prefer that Bob was talking about me and my opinions, or my show's opinions. It's not actually me in this instance, it's other people who are expressing their views on my show. But that's obviously going to be tarred to me, and I accept that. But that being the case, what would I prefer? Bob talking about the most recent China moon landings in its crapovision? Or would I rather he was talking about an internal issue that's taking place on Flat Earth debate? Well, obviously, I'd prefer the latter, even if it comes with a little bit of negative spin and personal connotations that I don't care about in reality. You know, they're not that consequential. I'd much rather have the promotion. Much, much prefer that. And that's what's happening now. Long it live, as far as I'm concerned. I hope it continues for a long time. And that way, we're discussing about the other people who surround this community, the Flat Earth community, if you want to call it that. Well, you know, if we're all preoccupied fighting fundies, you'll be watching a fight with a fundie on Flat Earth debate and won't have any conscious awareness of another show that might be going on a different channel, because it's not being discussed, because there's no time to do it. Wow. Nice to be in the luxurious position to actually be doing this at the moment and talking about another show that does disseminate good information, and they're doing the same for us. Although they're saying we're wrong in this instance. Doesn't change the fact that someone who's watching that's going to recognise, oh right, so there's a discussion, a worthy discussion going back and forth between these two shows. Maybe I'll tune into the other show and see what they're saying. Well, that's going to benefit both parties, isn't it? From a YouTube point of view, this is brilliant. Great.
Yeah, and I hear
Couldn't agree more,
people
Nathan.
like Bev on... sorry, was someone saying something there?
Just saying, yeah, I agree.
Go ahead, Brian.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, I listened to Bev last night and the nonsense like that he's having just to try to get some cooperation out of Sly Sparkane and people like that. It's just like such nonsense. It's like sometimes I don't know how he has the energy for it, all the nonsense they deal with on Discord, because they deal with such poison on Discord. You know, Bev and domesticated primate and all them. They really have to deal with a lot of nonsense to get, all because Bev is pointing out that horizontal and level are the same thing, and they just don't. The ballers cannot take this, and that's basically his whole argument for a year now or more. And it's like the poisonous nonsense they're dealing with, and the amount of red tape, and it's like anything but progress, you know. So this might be a bit poisonous itself, but at least there's something happening, you know, kind of.
Can I just say something?
Go ahead.
Like I said earlier in the live show, I've been watching you guys since about 2017, and FED just on and off, to be honest with you. It was more Glowbusters and Jeranism until Nathan went on Glowbusters and talked to Bob and them about Netflix, right? And I always thought that FED was a little bit not my taste. It was a little more aggressive in the argument. But after that discussion, right, or disagreement, I wanted to find out more, like why is Nathan as passionate about the topic as he is, and that made me tune in. So on that, there's a lot of positive things that can come out of disagreement, in my opinion.
Exactly. No such thing as bad advertising. In the short term, being described as some 2-penny grocery delivery boy or whatever he described me as, you know, it leaves a sting in the short term, and you think, oh, that's not going to be good. And it wasn't. You know, lost a lot of subscribers. And in the long term, it's not going to be anything other than positive. People like yourself heard of me as a direct consequence. Now, while there will be people who are influenced by that and go, oh, right, he's a bad guy, I better unsubscribe, and they did, many of them have come back. And along with other people who've come as a consequence of it. So you think, okay, so it still stands true. I researched this a couple of years back, maybe longer. There's no such thing as bad advertising in the long run.
I guess.
Go on, Neil.
Go on, Neil.
No, I just said I guess you're right, but that did bother me a little bit when he called you that, I must admit. Still bothers me.
Well, don't let it become personal.
Well, the thing about the flat earth debates is a lot of people who get into flat earth, they find it easier to listen to Glowbusters and journalism and even go on to Ranties these days. Because Ranties, although he's after passing it over to Brandon Toy now, it's kind of a midway between the two in some way. It's a bit more relaxed than flat earth debates when they're dealing with the ballers, and it's a bit more, the arguments are a little bit more like our side. So it's more relaxed like Glowbusters, but the arguments are more like the flat earth debates. But the thing about it is that after a while of people dealing with the ballers, they end up here. Because at first it's a bit intimidating, it's not what they want. People might find it a bit aggressive sometimes when they hear the ballers here, and Nathan, you're giving it to them down the banks or whatever is happening. Even coming in to comment here is more stressful for people than go into Ranties. But the thing about it is that in the end of the day, they all end up here because after you've been around that community for a while, the flat earth and globe earth community, you just can't put up with any more BS from the Globers. You just get to a point where, like, hang on a minute, how come that person and them people on that show, how come the ballers have a much harder time with them? Because of certain things. I'm not saying that bad against Brandon Toy or Ranty Show. I mean, it is like they do hold the ballers to task, but they leave them a bit more leeway than they get on the flat earth debates. And it's only after you've dealt with a lot of rubbish from the borders that you end up here. And it's a place that people didn't think they'd end up at. But they realise they don't see the wisdom until they get to the point of going, hang on, I'm dealing with a lot of crazy lawyers here. This is people who literally do have a fundamental belief, and they go, the way I'm going about it is not working, but the way these people are going about it, this is working. So, and that's why a lot of the arguments from the flat Earth debates do transcend over to Ranties and Brandons, and obviously, and a lot of what is talked about over the years on the flat Earth debates has transcended over towards globebusters and journalism as well. So, but people find it difficult. They're intimidated by it at first, a lot of people, but then they end up here. That's what happens.
Well, if you're a newbie and you come across somebody who's essentially fighting against, I'll give an example because it's recent, a claim that we have Earth turn. It's complicated to understand the claim of how you would have Coriolis effect. In some ways, because of the convolution on Wiki and various other sources, it's complicated to learn what Coriolis is in the first instance, and then it's complicated to understand how someone like me will pull apart somebody who's claiming they don't have the claim that they need to prove Earth spins by dissecting their denial of their own claim to justify why it doesn't manifest in reality. Now, even that summary is mildly complicated enough to put off somebody who goes, Coriolis effect, we do have that, right? We're spinning and Earth has that. If that's the level that you're at, and you hear me pulling apart Rumpus, who's saying, no, we would expect Earth and atmosphere to travel as one, and we wouldn't expect to see any deviation. If you're hearing a glober fighting for that, you're going to go, I don't really understand what's being argued, and how the fallacy is being pointed out, and the denial of their own claim is being pointed out, to then have the actual summary put forth 20 minutes later, that therefore, if you're saying Earth and atmosphere travel as one, there is no Coriolis deviation observable from the ground. Sometimes that's just too complicated. Being on the cutting edge means you can't satisfy somebody who comes here as a newbie. And they're going to go, oh, it's just too aggressive. He's just told a guy called Tim Osman to suck his balls. And that's after a complicated rendition of how a physical geometric sphere edge isn't represented by way of a modus tollens argument that if the Earth is a sphere radius 3959, then every distance to horizon can be no more than 1.2 times the observer's height in the feet. Therefore, when you've got an observation of a horizon that's way beyond that distance, that would be 1.2 miles at a 1 foot observer height, you haven't got a geometric sphere edge horizon. Therefore, all your glober quotes come that you haven't got a geometric horizon to observe, and we then come back with, therefore you can't use the R value to push it into a different position with geometry. How are you going to keep up with all of that? If you're a newbie, you're not. Can't have it both ways. You can't be on the cutting edge and keep everyone happy. Also, if you're a newbie, you wouldn't recognise that the guy having that geometric lack of sphere edge physicality pointed out to him is a 5-year-old troll that used to come and pawn bomb the show to shut it down. Well, if you don't know that, you're not going to understand the high level of vitriol that's come his way when his argument's been defeated, i.e. with a justification, because that's the only way we can do it. You've got to win the argument before you can tear into somebody if you're a flat earther. If you're a globe earther, you can automatically join and just call them stupid, and everyone will cheer. So you've got to pick your moments. So for me, it was a big victory to be able to tell him to suck my balls. Some people will just come to that and go, well, that's just crude. You've got a good argument. Couldn't you have just put it forward? Well, I could, if it wasn't somebody with a lot of history that needs those terms putting to him for it to sting him in some small way, right? Because if I don't put it in those terms, it doesn't sting him.
Because unless you were following, you don't know the context of a guy like that coming in here and absolutely declaring clear as day for everybody that nobody claims the horizon is the curve of the Earth. You don't understand how devastating that is unless you've been following. If you've been following this show for 2 months, you have no idea how devastating a clown like that saying something like that is. That's the beautiful part of it.
But it's also symbiotic. In other words, nobody's going to reach the cutting edge unless they get the bare bones ideas from people like Mark Sargent. The conceptual ideas that we will then later vilify and demonize, that's the right word, with things like flat earth maps and models. It's a symbiotic relationship. Without them, you can't get somebody to conceptualize something that just defies their worldview in the first instance. And if they can't take that first step, they're never going to arrive here. So in other words, you've got to pick your battles internally. Should I go to Mark and say, shh, stop saying Earth's this representation of the azimuthal equidistant projection, because later down the line, you end up with the globers using a false dichotomy by way of begging the question, affirming the consequent form, a logical fallacy mark. And he'll look at me with cross-eyed going, what? No, I just need people to understand that there is another way of looking at the world. Yeah, but they'll use false dichotomy down the road, Mark. No, better to recognise that without that first step being pushed by Mark Sargent, or anybody else I could give an example of, they're never going to arrive here to understand the fundamental principles of a very complex web of lies and how it gets pulled apart.
Exactly, Nathan. And exactly what Chocolate said. What's the step before here, and it's also like an optional thing, is Ranties, because on Ranties you have obviously, well, it's Brandon's now, but on Ranty, over there you have Ranty, right? And Ranty spent a long time as a panel member on the Flat Earth debates, and he has such knowledge behind him to do with optics and everything else. So he's a big problem for the ballers if he's in there. Brandon has spent a lot of time, he spent some time here, but he spent a lot of time on Jose's debating them. But then you have people like S.E. Montreal and Dave Rakia and Travis and Paige over there on in Brandon and Ranties. And they are correcting people when other flat earthers are coming in and they're saying things wrong. Like they'll correct them on. S.E. Montreal is always correcting people on the Coriolis effect. He's always saying, no, it's not. No, not the latitudes. It's the visual effect. They're always at it. And bit by bit, like even Right the Hand is correcting people on the Coriolis effect. You know, things like that. So you have a lot of people over there who've been here, and so a lot of them still do come here, and they are correcting people who are newer people, or people who might not be brand new, but they might have still some of those arguments a little bit wrong. So that's a good thing, because it means then people eventually will I'm going to use the term lightly, right, gravitate towards this show. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, over time, I reckon the audience for the Flat Earth debates is going to grow exponentially, simply because of all those steps, starting with Mark Sargent.
The same goes for Quantum Eraser's channel, right? Because if this is the tip of the spear, well, the shiny point is the Quantum Eraser channel. There's a lot of people who will go to that channel, me included, when he was broadcasting on Cathexis's channel. His similar presentations, similar format, and it was just above my pay grade, so far above my pay grade, that I would just sit in the chat and talk shit with people, because I didn't really understand it. Now, me, I've experienced that, so I know that there's going to be other people who are exactly the same, because they're just not at that particular stage where they're going to understand a dissection of the double slit or the delayed choice quantum eraser experiment in terms of the justification for a creator. A lot of that's going to just be so far above people's heads that they're just going to switch off. It's difficult to digest. But by the time you've progressed your way through a lot of other places, right the way to the tip of the spear, you're going to end up at Quantum Eraser's channel, understanding what he's talking about, because you've got a good understanding of how fallacies are used in discussions when it comes to this subject. Maybe because you've learnt them here, or because you've learnt them on other channels that are also specifically detailing, as flat earthers, how fallacies are used. So if you've found your way to Quantum Eraser's channel, and you're not totally intimidated by what he's talking, and I'll give another disclaimer, only on Ballbusters the other day, Quantum Eraser dropped in part of his presentation. Again, it was just so far above my pay grade, and someone on the Discord server, when it was like any comments, was like, I don't follow it, I'm really lost now. And I had to say to him, so am I. You know, QE intentionally presents his information on multiple different levels. And on occasion, when he used to present them to me before going live with them, he doesn't do that anymore, there's no need. He'd say, you know, don't worry about this bit, I'm not tailoring this to you. I don't expect me to now sit through this presentation while I'm showing it you, for you to now start asking questions about this particular aspect of quantum mechanics, because it's not at your pay grade. Now, he's quite blunt with me, and I'm like, yeah, okay, fair enough. I don't need to know it, because it's not justifiable about how the amino acids work in this justifiable rebuttal that I'm not giving. You know, it's just there because he's preemptively had rebuttals from other people on that specific subject matter who are far more qualified to give a not justified rebuttal according to him, which is what he details in his presentation. Do I understand it? No. Do I need to? No, not in the slightest. If it ever came to me needing to understand it, I'd probably ask and get a reasonably concise explanation with me repeating the same question 10 times to him, because that's how learning works. It doesn't just sink in because you've watched one presentation about something. You know, you think you know because you've heard someone else detail it concisely, and then you go to someone else and go, how do you explain this particular aspect of this particular, I don't know, let's think something unrelated. Acoustic treatment, as it's all around me, and I've done a GoFundMe recently for it. It's like I've watched thousands of hours on it. But if someone actually came to me and said, well, what do I do about this? I'd suddenly realise how limited my knowledge is when I couldn't repeat back what all of the educated acousticians talk about. But I've watched hundreds, if not thousands of hours of presentations on it. So, does that mean I'm suddenly an expert? No. And the same applies in Flat Earth. You know, we're here, you included, Brian, Arwin, Chocolate. We've been here for years doing this. So, you know, while stuff might concisely flow off our tongues that's above some people's pay grade, it's not intimidating if you've already gone through all the other logical steps to get to where you are on your journey to basically being able to annihilate anybody in conversation when it comes to this subject. If you've reached here and you're recognising all of the things that are being discussed, you're at the point where you can go out into a coffee shop, be chit-chatting about how you were watching a Flat Earth show or whatever, you might be chatting and someone overhears you, and they say, well, we've got gravity, and like that, you'll have a comeback that'll annihilate them within 5 or 6 seconds. And that'll end that conversation. And they might start sharing their pain with you, rather than you having to stumble and stutter around your what seems like a belief to any normie, because you haven't got the cutting-edge arguments down.
Sounds like a day at work to me.
Exactly, just a walk in the park for you.
No, I totally agree.
Sometimes
I mean,
I'm having arguments with some of my coworkers while I'm here on the show muted. I have coworkers in the background arguing with me.
So yeah, I know all about that.
Yeah, Brian, I'm sorry.
Sorry, no, we both spoke at the same time. Chocolate. Yeah, no, when I was saying people come here, I also was including, obviously, Quantum Racer, because he is the final, like, people will start Mark Sargent as step one, and Quantum Racer is the end, because there's other things that he knows that he can't, he's not even probably divulging, because we're not at the point, maybe, of getting this knowledge. You know, that kind of thing. It's like, he likes to keep it simple. He's able to tell someone who's brand new, give them a very simple concept, and they go, yeah, that makes total sense. Or he can complicate the hell out of it. You know, he can do either. He has that ability. Whereas someone who's starting, they have to keep it simple. And someone who's been in it a good while, they always try to complicate it. But you have to get back to being able to say it simply, as well as complicate things if needed, or deal with complicated issues, you know. I think it was Einstein, it's attributed to him online, I don't know if it's true or not, but he said if you can't explain something simply, then you don't know it well enough. And I don't really know of anything that Quantum Eraser can't just give you a simple answer on. You know, some things obviously, if you look for specifics, he's going to have to get detailed, but, you know, mostly he can give you a simple answer.
If there's an answer to be given, you can easily catch anybody out. Quantum Racer's no exception. You know, if you don't know what something is and you ask them, they're not going to know either. They can just give you an argument from ignorance if they wish. But, you know, if there's an answer to be had and he knows the answer, but Quantum Eraser's still going to quite happily acknowledge when he's got a limited understanding of something. So he gives an analogy about fixing cars. He's like, my cousin or whoever he's describing as an example fixes cars, and when they are wrenching away on an engine and I'm there, I know to keep my mouth shut, you know, because I don't know anything about it. Why would I embarrass myself? And, you know, if you can translate that into this subject, and you know, when Mark Sargent's talking about the first rule of Fight Club, it's like, yeah, it kind of translates to, if you don't really know the arguments, don't embarrass yourself. Just, you know, keep it under your what's the one under your hat. You know, don't necessarily go blarting about it, because people will ask you questions, and if you don't know the answers, they'll just immediately ridicule you for not knowing, and for, you know, being foolish for even thinking it. And who wants to be left in that position? Better to just keep it under your hat and get a better grip of the underlying arguments that they put forward, because to be able to defeat them, unfortunately, you've got to become an expert in heliocentrism, which every single person on this panel is. We know all of the aspects of heliocentrism that you can name, and how they don't work, and how to debunk them. Now, you can't do that unless you've got a really thorough understanding of your opponent's position. Like with any debate, you've got to know your argument, and you've got to know your opponent's argument.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for being able to say, I don't know, isn't there?
Yeah. If somebody presents an argument that you haven't got a position on, or you don't know how to debunk, just disclaim it rather than attempting it and then having your ass handed to you. Yeah, if they claim victory, it was someone, I can't remember who, someone came on and says, do you know what an argument from silence is? I'm like, I know. I vaguely have a clue, but I'm not going to attempt to say yes and then fumble my way through it based on the assumption of what argument from silence could be. But after having it detailed, you think, yeah, if you're in a position where someone puts an argument point to you and you don't know the answer, and they claim victory based on you not knowing the answer or having a rebuttal, you can claim argument from silence fallacy. Just because I don't have an answer doesn't mean there isn't a response or a rebuttal, or that your position is true.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you have to show honesty. If you don't know, don't pretend. Isn't that it? You know, yeah. It's like, what's the sun? You know, all you can say is, I have no idea. That's the only honest thing. You can speculate and postulate, but the honest answer is, no, I have no idea. I don't know anyone who does.
I quite like that after doing the interview with Vice, because that's exactly what I said. I was like, I don't know what the sun is, I don't know what the moon is, because I don't. But that leads people in to go, you don't know what the sun is? Well, it's a burning ball of gas in a sky vacuum. No, it isn't. That's a violation of the second law of thermodynamics. You can't have gas not expanding in all directions to fill the availability of volume in a vacuum. So no. But you think you know what the sun is, right? Now you look foolish. Me, I don't know. More than happy to disclaim that, only for you to tell me some rhetoric-based nonsense that you've had from some heliocentric magician on a television screen, based on an assumption of an R value and Kepler's third law of interplanetary motion. Oh, you didn't know that they assume Venus is the same size as Earth. Why is it that I know that and you don't, when you're telling me what the sun is? Yeah, I don't know what it is, but you think you know what it is based on a load of garbage that I can pull apart in about 5 seconds.
That's when I usually get that look from the coworker, like, how dare you think you know more about my model than me? It's like, I'm sorry, but that's just how that goes. That's why I know that what you're telling me is bunk, because I understand how it's supposed to work and how that relates to reality, and it doesn't work in reality, but you just believe it. So you just want to say, nah, this works because I read so in a book. Meanwhile, you don't even know the story that's in the book that you're trying to tell me. It's insane. The confidence that not knowing anything about this model gives people. It's so weird.
Yeah, the confidence that men have already figured it out for them and they don't need to concern themselves. Like in the Truman Show, when the teacher pulls down the map. Well, there's nothing else to discover. It's already been figured out. Don't worry your pretty little head about it.
As you know, Nathan, and a couple of other people on the panel know, I made a video about Mr. Sensible's Mage 2 video or whatever, because there was a lot. It just seemed to be kind of a lot of people making videos about it, and he was kind of pushing it forward a lot. And besides, like, obviously, I could have gone down the road of, well, you know, you can't. Is the horizon a sphere edge? You know, but what argument I picked, the main argument, was that the temperature reading he has when he's at 37 kilometers high, up in the, which would be what we're told is the upper stratosphere, right, is plus 4.5 degrees Celsius or whatever. Whereas, according to weather.gov, it can be no higher than minus 15. And another website said it can never go higher than 0. So it's like things like that. It's like your model is telling you this, but the reality is you're getting this. You know, how can you be getting that when your model says it has to be this? You know, yeah, like the lower stratosphere is planes flying it and that, so they kind of have a good idea what's going on there. But the upper stratosphere, when it gets to that and going into the what they call the mesosphere, I think it is next. It's all starts becoming calculations, doesn't it? And it's just like they start making things up. It's like, but how can you get that temperature reading when officially you're not supposed to be able to get that?
Indeed. With that, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and Google panels for making today's after show possible, and of course a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and all that good stuff. Be sure to check out nathanoakley.com and the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.